Hi, everyone. Welcome to Breaking the Science podcast, produced by Angel Protection, Inc., where we uplift the voices of young mothers of color and advocates working tirelessly to ensure that they receive the care, dignity, and justice that they deserve. I'm your host, Makaila Davis, founder and chairwoman of Angels Protection, Inc., and in this fourth episode, we're introducing our newest series, The Justice Blueprint, a deep dive into policy, law, and reform through an equity-centered lens, connecting local systems to national movements. At Angels Protection Inc., we see the realities too often overlooked: young mothers navigating mental health stigma, partner violence, housing insecurity, and systematic neglect, all while raising their children and striving to survive. In this series here, it's more about awareness, but really focusing on action. And we really want to make sure that we're understanding how justice, public health, and equity all intersects to one another. And we also want to make sure that we're looking at how collectively we're building systems that heal rather than harm. So today's guest brings a powerful insight into that mission, and I couldn't think of a better person to help us unpack what real reform looks like in the community. So we have our guest here, Kierra Nocho, and she's a Philadelphia native and she's dedicated to justice reform. She's a professional and policy practitioner with a strong academic and experiential foundation in criminology and philosophy and public policy. Kierra, she received her bachelor's degree in criminology and philosophy at Penn State University, and she's currently the Philadelphia Reentry Coalition Coordinator with the City of Philadelphia's Office of Reentry Partnerships. She leads strategic initiatives and strengthens collaboration among local, state, and federal partners, which is really critical and important for the work that's happening right now. So her work, it focuses on coalition building and data-driven reentry solutions that reduce recidivism and promote community and reintegration. Kierra is currently pursuing her master's in public policy and working as a research assistant in the Department of Criminology at Drexel University. She also combines her academic training with hands-on experience to advance equitable and evidence-based practices in the criminal justice system. Her career reflects a commitment to transforming the criminal legal system through research, advocacy, and collaboration rooted in lived experience and public service. She also brings a deep insight in today's conversation, and we are honored to welcome her today on episode 4. So I just want to give you a time if you want to just kind of introduce yourself off that a little bit.
Yes, thank you for the wonderful introduction, for the invitation. Hello, everyone. My name is Kierra Nocho, as stated. I'm very excited to be here. I have been working with the city for about 4 years. And so before coming into reentry, I worked in the gun violence and intervention program or group violence intervention program in the Office of Public Safety as well. And prior to coming to city, I've been on different sides of the criminal justice system. And so now at this point, I'm, as you can see, like entering the policy world, and really getting to see with all of these collaborations how change works, because I've worked in the community side, I've worked on the city side, and now I get to see more what's happening in the federal side. So I'm excited to share some insight, but I'm forever learning, forever a student. Um, I'm new in the game, so to speak. I'm a bit younger than a lot of my predecessors, but I'm very passionate about the work, and excited to drive change. So,
No, definitely. And that kind of like kicks off. Again, welcome to Breaking the Silence podcast. And I kind of just want to start off with if you could share what inspired you to pursue a career in criminal justice reform.
sure. So initially, just think at birth, my purpose was always to be in some type of people-driven field to help in some aspect. And it really started my passion for criminal justice in general, kind of started from a realistic approach of having family members and living in an impoverished neighborhood, and being so close to the criminal justice system, right? Seeing friends, family members, and people being affected by it. And on the other hand, a very superficial side of myself, Law and Order. I was obsessed with the character Tamara Tooney, and so I'm like medical advisor. I want to figure something out. And so that kind of drove my interest on like, okay, what's happening? Why are people getting locked up? Why do people keep going back to jail? Like, why aren't people making other choices? What's really going on? And so that got me into the field. And as I began to study it, I realized all the inequities within it, and just specifically being in prison, the conditions in which people are imprisoned, that kind of really bothered me because I'm not an abolitionist in the sense that I think that, if there's a problem, quote unquote, for lack of better words, there should be a place where someone can retreat to get healing. I don't agree with the way that that looks like now, but I do agree with separation, healing, and then reintegrating into society. And so once I saw that, kind of started to answer my question of why are people coming in and out of jail, keep going back, because everybody I know who's been there once has gone again. And so once I noticed that, it really piqued my interest to see, okay, what are you doing while incarcerated that's not resulting in some type of change? Like for me, if I get in trouble, I'm on punishment, I'm not going to do it again. Like I don't want to go be back on punishment. I don't want to suffer that consequence. And so I realized we're not really doing a good job of rehabilitating people while they are incarcerated. And so there really is no model put in place to set people up for success. And so that's been my kind of parking point here of trying to continue to figure out what's going on behind the walls and how we can improve those conditions and then funnel from there, tackling bigger problems.
No, I definitely agree. It's kind of like as you said, if you do something and you know not to do it again because you do not want that punishment. So why is there a revolving door for folks? Um, so I guess that kind of goes into like my next question as well. Like, what does effective collaboration look like between government, nonprofits, and the community when it comes to helping returning citizens reintegrate successfully?
I think initially it requires real partnership, right? And so we think of, excuse me, even from some of the community organizations, even looking at the city. So even from a city level, city officials, I feel that most community members equate city, state, fed with money. Okay, we're going to reach out to these folks so we can get funding, we can get money, which is very important and necessary. I'm not negating that. And then from the, administrative city, state, and federal side, it's like, okay, we'll give to these organizations so it can fulfill somewhat of a purpose or a policy that we set forth. And I think it became this superficial kind of bond, whereas the okay, we want money, we'll give you money, and we both kind of can say we checked off the box of what we needed to do, and that eliminates a lot of necessary conversation, a lot of necessarily partnering on more than just you having a need and not fulfilling it monetarily. Like we really need to bring these parties to the table and figure out what the root issues are because to be honest, it doesn't work with one without the other. You can have all the money in the world as a federal employee, but if you don't have the boots on the ground community knowledge, you don't know where to place it and how it's going to be effective, and vice versa. You can be very well versed in the community, but if you don't have finance to back your vision and all the things that you have going on, it won't sustain either. And so I think that what creates a great partnership between these two entities is literally sitting down at the table together and carving out that time, not just once, but setting it up so that it's regularly. Like if I'm funding you, we need to be meeting regularly and understanding what it is, the barriers that you're facing, and let's tackle them outside of just this you need money, I give it to you aspect.
No, definitely. Because it's important that we're also like capturing the data that, as you're giving funding, because funding is really critical for nonprofits,
Yes.
government agencies, anybody that's involved that's doing this work, even if you're starting as like a grassroots project. But the data is really critical. So I also wanted to like kind of tie into how does data-driven reentry actually work in practice? And if you could share an example where evidence or like metrics really guided real change.
Yes, and so I'll start by being transparent. In the reentry field, and I'll just speak with reentry. Um, there's a barrier in just obtaining data, period. If you don't work within a prison, and sometimes even then, or if you're not working within a certain entity, it's hard to get data from other entities and to use it for example. So if we're trying to gather data on people coming home, right? If we don't have that direct link, who's providing us, persons who are coming out every day, or how many people are currently incarcerated, how many people are on their way home, those type of things, we can't effectively, you know, um, perfect our outreach because we don't have those numbers and those data sets as well. And so if we can't get it at a city level, I can just imagine the strife that you face at a community level because those numbers and that data is not made public. So that's number one. Like just even within whether you're in any stage of community, city, state, whatever, it's very hard to get data. And that's just a crucial problem that we're all facing in the field in general. So what we begin to do is just develop our own data within our offices and within our, citywide data. And so an example that we curated would be this year, past year, should I say, the beginning of 2025, we put out a needs assessment survey. And so what we asked persons that who are in the coalition to do is to funnel it out into their client base and those people that they work with and allow people who are returning home or even working for the organization to describe the needs that they want and what they need. And after collecting the results of that survey, we were able to get um, funding and sources to support the specific industries in which they said they needed help in. So whether if it was housing, or a lot of people said, we did one specifically for women, and the number one thing that women who were returning home said they needed were water, a water bottle, reusable water bottles. And that's something that we would never guess when we run down the list of like, okay, what do we think people who are coming home, what do they need? I know for myself and others in my office would have never thought a reusable water bottle. But putting out those type of surveys, collecting that type of data, it helps us move more efficiently and more effectively for even just the population that we served here in the city.
No, definitely. I think like also constantly doing surveys too. Because sometimes we do and we think, okay, well, this is what worked for the population that we worked with doing the survey, but what about the next population that's coming in to be, reintegrated into society? They might have a different need.
Exactly.
So yeah, like you said, we would have never I never would have thought that what they needed was a reusable water bottle. I would have thought like maybe okay, like, housing, a job, clothes, like most of the basic things that we usually think that folks need
Mm-hmm.
when they're trying to be reintegrated. But it's something so small like that is really impactful. Um, and that kind of ties into my next question as well too. How can we embed equity and lived experience in criminal justice policy design, not just as input, but as leadership?
Um, I'll use again my office, for example, Office of Reentry Partnership. Well, we're transitioning into a new name, so let me try to start saying that, to Division of Reentry. It hasn't launched officially yet, but try to get my words together. But and within the Office of Public Safety in general, which is the umbrella organization, our office prioritizes hiring people with lived experience, right? And so ooh, scared me. Sorry. It's one thing to have a coalition, which is a powerful entity, and having people sit on a board and be on a panel of, distinguished persons and giving their input and things like that. But to actually put persons in a place of leadership or give people a paying job where they're sitting in a seat that not only their voice can be heard, but they can be compensated and they can make a living off of, not just saying you are your experience and that's what you're paid for, but it's you have that experience and now that's so valuable that now we can give you a tangible, a livable product off of that. My executive director has a lived experience in a felony conviction, which she is not candid about. And she's the executive director of the office, as well as my direct deputy director, lived experience, felony conviction. Prior office that I worked before under Office of Public Safety with the GVI, both directors, executive, all lived experience, all of some justice impacted formality. And so that is the way to truly empower. And I'm not saying it's not important to have justice impacted persons on a board and in a panel and things like that. Of course, all is necessary, but I think to truly make that change is taking the step further to where we're not just utilizing people for an event or a speaking engagement or something like that. We're creating long lasting and longevity for persons who have been impacted to succeed and continue to further themselves and pull up other people. Because then now I'm at this seat at the head. I can now look at applications and see, okay, this person's been justice impacted, but I know that it's more to that. And now we begin to pull up the ladder, destigmatize the scarlet letter of, having a conviction of some sort. So I think to me, that's one of the most important things.
No, definitely. I think lived experience is very important. And it looks like many different things, but I think is when we're talking about like leadership, it's important to have folks that have that lived experience. Because if they don't and they're put in a role that they're dealing with folks that are being heavily impacted by different social terms of health issues,
Yeah,
it could harm the community. But
absolutely.
if you have that lived experience, you know what it was like, so you have empathy towards folks that are going through it and you will really like continuously advocate every single day for more dollars that we can put out to nonprofits that are doing the work, building more partnerships, making sure that we're getting the resources out there that need to be, whether that's for like mental health, substance
Mhm.
abuse, Narcan,
Yeah,
and just continuously that advocacy work. But you have that lived experience, so it's just in you. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, I know that it's so important to have those folks at the table. And like you said, bringing them, then you can build your table even bigger because
Exactly.
you're in that seat. Um, so yeah, I also wanted to touch on too, like at Angels Protection Inc., we view justice as a public health issue. So
Mhm.
like mental health, housing, education, and access to care, it all intersects. So
Yeah.
how does your work address these broader systematic barriers that impact reentry?
Absolutely. I'll speak to the coalition, and as I speak to the coalition, it speaks to the office as well, but just speaking more on my role. So, within the coalition, we all know that the overarching goal is to support people coming home, right? Reentry is our quote unquote purpose, and um, reducing recidivism. Like we all have that number one goal, but within the coalition, there are subsets or subcommittees, subgroups on which we focus on different industries. So we have a housing subgroup, we have an employment subgroup, we have a health, that's its physical and mental health subgroup. We have women and youth subgroup as well, realizing that, like you said, it's not just a okay, who's getting locked up, who's coming home. Let's just talk about that piece. There are so many other things that intersect with this issue. And so we realize we have to start looking at as many barriers as we can, or the most populated ones, and start to tackle those. And so I think that we do a good job as best as we can to section out these things that need the most attention. So with housing, we work with other offices in the city, OHS, independent landlords, developing a landlord list that are, reentry friendly for persons who are coming home. So we already know if we're referring folks over, the record won't be an issue. And so that's one of the ways where we're trying to help with the housing. And then we have a partner who helps people get funding if they are on state parole. So addressing some of those barriers there, though we haven't had the problem fixed completely right, but that's one of the things that we use. We work with a lot of mental health and health practitioners. There's a big discord of people who are receiving medication behind the walls, and then when they get out, they don't get the proper records or they don't get the proper continuum of care. So we have partners with Penn, with Drexel, different therapy or consults. What are they called? Like therapist office or people who have groups where they'll offer free therapy to persons coming home. Black Men Heals is one of our partners. We have another one, CFR, Center for Family and Relationship. They offer free trauma therapy as well. And so we try to connect people to those services. And in each of those subgroups, we try to identify, in short, partners who have we try to do free everything. So partners who have resources in these areas and offer free services to stay connected with them. Try to get them more city, federal funding when things come down the pipe. Make sure they're aware so that when we send people over, we almost always can guarantee that there'll be some free support in those areas. So I guess I'll say that um, identifying the subcommittees and then identifying leaders and leader organizations in those subcommittees that could help support these issues instead of looking at it as a one shoe issue, kind of breaking down the essential parts and tackling those as well.
No, definitely. And then really touching on making sure that the services are free for folks because they cannot afford to pay for
Exactly.
therapy. They may not have health insurance at
Mm-hmm.
all, not
Mm-hmm.
even, state insurance, Medicaid. Um, so, really keeping all those things in mind, like everything needs to be free from the
Yeah.
Narcan if they need
Yeah.
that, to the therapy, if
Mm-hmm.
they may need, food until they can get
Yeah.
connected to food stamps,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a whole, again, another system that you need to apply for and you need to qualify for, and you need
Absolutely.
documents. They may not have their social security card or their birth certificate. So,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
need to prove that you're a United States citizen, that you're
Yeah.
real. So,
Exactly.
yeah, and you're supposed to, so
Right.
it's all these different barriers and layers to things that folks don't really think about. And making sure like even that is free to get your
Yeah.
documents. Um,
Absolutely.
that could be another barrier. They may not be able to afford to go pay for a printout
Yeah.
of their, birth certificate. Um, and I think there's only so many times that you can get a social security card as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Nope.
that's another,
And we do
barrier.
support that at our office. Anybody who's wondering, you can come on down. We help you get your essential documents. We have face sheets, all free of charge. So just throwing that out there.
Oh, that's beautiful. See? It's all right there.
Yeah. You gotta look, you gotta look. But it's hard to find. We're working on it. Trust me, we're working on
No,
it.
it's really critical important that people know where to go.
Yes.
But I think that also ties into my next question. So, what gives you hope when we think about the next generation of reformers and policymakers?
Gen Z. These, I don't want to say kids because some of them are in their 20s as well. I just think that this generation, this new generation, is loud and proud. I mean, I always thought I was a bit of a rebel and somewhat of a disruptor, but I'm still kind of modest. Like I'll keep it cute, for lack of better words, most times. Like this generation, they are just slapping it on like this is it, like this is what I'm doing, this is what I want, this is what I stand for. I don't care if you haven't seen anything like it in 100 years, if this goes against everything you knew to be true. Like we're here now and this is how we're showing up. And so it gives me hope because so many things are outdated and so many things have to be rattled. And I think that at least my parents' generation before me, they were kind of the first, like the boomers. They were the first to kind of, gain some sense of like success really in a material sense. And then they also kind of learned how to be coy and like, kind of roll with the punches, not disturb or disrupt too much, because then you'll get, and again, too much trouble, right, in that punishment. And then I think my generation came along and we pushed the needle a little bit, but we still, kind of kept it cute on sometimes. Like we did a little bit, but I think we still had a modesty to us. This generation, I don't see a modest bone in them. I think that they are loud, proud, like I said, and they are ready to disrupt. And I think although some things may look extreme because we haven't seen them before, I think it's necessary because it's just, again, so many things are outdated and we have extremities coming from opposing sides anyway. For example, what's going on in government, there are a lot of extremes there as well. So who's to say that we the people can't be extreme in combating that? And so it gives me hope to show that although we are getting extreme um, pressure or extreme ways of movement, I'll say, from, our leaders politically, it makes me proud that we aren't afraid as a people now in this new generation to be just as extreme, to be just as blunt, and be just as ready to push back when things are coming down the pipe. And so that makes me hopeful and excited.
No, definitely. And there's so many younger folks that are getting into holding political office. So,
Very true.
yeah, really grateful to see that. Um, and so also want to touch on, so what's one thing you want listeners, especially young women navigating systematic barriers, to take away from today's conversation? And also, how can listeners stay connected to the work that you do or get involved in local justice reform efforts?
Um, I would say what I would want myself to say. Again, I had that rebelistic mentality, and so I've had a phase where I just disconnected from everything. I'm like, okay, I don't want to vote. I don't care about what's going on. I'm just gonna live my life and just completely kind of be ignorant to some of the larger things at bay. And I think that was just ignorant on my part. I'm not going to say a mistake because I'm grateful for every phase that I went through. But I do believe that although being a rebel and knowing when something's just not right all the way or you can't blindly follow something, it does behoove you to be knowledgeable about what's going on. And so now I would just say to the younger generation that, you can have your principles and you can have the things that you stand on, but also be knowledgeable about what you're talking about because at the end of the day, you can't effectively argue, debate, or criticize something when you really don't know what it is. And I found myself in that space numerous times where, oh, that's just not right. And someone's like, well, what is it that they do? And I'm like, well, they're not fair and they're not just, and I couldn't tell you, one policy, or I couldn't tell you who sits in this seat. And that's not to say you have to memorize everything, but I think that it's very important. This upcoming generation, women in general, we need more women at these tables, in policy and reform, in politics. Like we just saw this election, a lot of first time women, a lot of things. We need more women at the table. And so, whether or not you want to sit there or not, I would think that the best advice I give is to make yourself knowledgeable about what's going on, whether you like it or not. It's effective for you to be able to create meaningful change.
No, definitely. Um, yeah, and it's really important just to get involved as young as you can too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because it starts young, and then you'll just be in that mindset of giving back. And being a part of the process.
Yeah.
Um, all that being said, I want to say thank you so much today, Kierra, for being a part of Breaking the Silence podcast, for your wisdom and your decades of service to the community. And conversations like this, it moves us one step closer to building systems that truly honor, support, and protect young mothers of color. So if you're
Yeah.
listening and you feel moved to take action, please do.
Yeah.
And visit angelsprotection.org to learn more about our projects and programs that we're doing for the upcoming 2026 year, from mental health outreach to harm reduction for upcoming projects that we're launching for our young women and mothers between the ages of 13 to 20. And remember, silence protects systems, not people. So let's keep breaking it together.
Yes. I
Thanks,
love that. Thank you
everyone.
so much for having me.
Oh, of course.